Welcome to the Tidewater Stream podcast. This podcast will cover the life of our Savior, Jesus Christ, from the lens of the four Gospels. Sit back, have your Bibles open, and enjoy this podcast.
That's right, we did the... this is one of my favorite stories.
Okay.
Casting out Legion. I think that's such a cool...
It is pretty cool story.
So this is going... Yeah, we're recording week 15, so we got... it's a lot of Legion. I think that's the Monday and Tuesdays reading where we'll have different contexts. Because I think some of the Gospels record different aspects of that. Then we're also going to get to... another good story that I quote all the time is Jairus and then the woman with the blood issue. And I think Mark and Luke for Thursday and Friday's reading just gives different perspectives on that. So I think it's going to be a fun reading. But on Monday, we're going to be introduced to casting out Legion. So go ahead and read Matthew chapter 8, verses 28 through 34. Then I'll get to
Matthew 8, 28 through 34. And when he came to the other side, into the region of the Gadarenes, 2 men who were demon-possessed met him as they were coming out of the tombs. They were so extremely violent that no one could pass by that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, "What do we have to do with you, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now there was a herd of many swine feeding at a distance from them. And the demons began to plead with him, saying, "If you're going to cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." And coming out, they went into the swine, and behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and perished in the waters. Now the herdsmen ran away and went to the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demoniacs. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region.
Alrighty, so then the next one will be Luke chapter 8, verses 26 through 39, which reads... Then they sailed to the country of the Gadarenes. Man, that's a hard word. I think Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. And when he stepped out on the land, there met him a certain man from the city who had demons for a long time, and he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house but in tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For it had often seized him, and he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles, and he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. And they begged him that he would not command them to go into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain, so they begged him that he would permit them to enter them. And he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down to the steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it to the city and the country. Then they went out to see what had happened and came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had departed sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. They also, who had seen it, told them by what means he who had been demon-possessed was healed. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear, and he got into the boat and returned. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with them, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your own house, and tell what great things God has done for you." And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done for him. Alrighty.
Is there a reading in Mark as well?
Is there a reading in Mark as well? No, that's tomorrow, on Tuesday.
Okay.
That's for Monday. So we got to save some comments for Tuesday's reading. So, no, I think that this is a great lead into a lot of stuff we've talked about in your Bible class and me you taught last quarter, and especially your class on Sunday, where was emphasizing a lot of the evangelism, parts of things. And I think in this example, we get to see that beautiful thing where here's someone who wants to be with Jesus.
Yeah.
Right at the end of it, right? Understandably so. This guy has a whole new life, right?
Right.
So much so, I think it's interesting that the people who saw him, I love the wording here where it says they saw him at the feet of Jesus, and I can't find it real quick, but I remember it says he was clothed and in his right mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that description.
That's verse 35 in Luke.
Yeah. It's kind of a low bar, right? When they're like, the description of you just changed. He's like, yeah, he's clothed and he's in his right mind.
Which is,
right?
for him, is a big
Exactly,
day.
yeah.
It's been a while.
Exactly. And so you can understand why he's at the feet of Jesus. And then when he says, no, I don't want to leave your side. I want to always be with you. And then Jesus says, no, I have something better for you. I need you to proclaim this message to everyone you meet. So he is the literal, like, small microcosm of Matthew 28 when we get to the end of Matthew and the Gospels of going to the world. So I think it's really cool that, as much as comfortable I'm sure it is to be around Jesus' presence, Jesus is like, no, there's something better for you. Yeah. Please, share this message with everyone.
Right. There's a reason he has been healed. And core to it is everybody, he was infamous. Yeah. Famous for being, bound up in this evil, and is now completely different. Yeah. And that's a really strong testimony as to what happened. Something happened, and then he goes around to the Decapolis, and which is the 10 cities of the region, telling everybody what Jesus has done for him. Yeah. And as a result, when Jesus returns to the Decapolis, they're ready to hear the gospel. Like, they did not want him to stick around. The fact that the swine are tossed out is freaks them out.
Well, I think there's also, I'm glad you brought that up, because we were talking off the podcast, like how to read a conversation to know when a Bible study is recommended or when, something else may be needed for someone you want to study the Bible with. And here, right, what are a lot of the emotional valence in this preceding passage? Even after this miraculous thing happened, it was seized with fear. They were afraid. They didn't understand what was going on. That's probably not the best time to be like, hey, you want to have a Bible study? Like when they're afraid. Right. So it's like you see some wisdom there with Jesus, like, hey, you proclaim, because everyone knows you, because you're the guy that, like, hey, this guy is now clothed in his right mind. So you're going to have a greater impact. And then, like you said, when he's going to come back, then it's kind of prepared for him to then teach. So I think this is a cool example of the timing matters. Reading the situation matters.
And also there's a time that the tool of telling what the Lord has done for you is just a tool in the evangelist's toolbox. Yeah. It's not the tool, it's a tool. That's important to know when to employ such a tool. It's like, there's a time and a place for hammers and screwdrivers. When you're dealing with nails and screws. And so you have to understand, so right now, what the Lord has done for me may not be at all useful if I'm talking, let's say Jared's not a Christian, and Jared does not care what my story is. He's not interested in my story, whatever. Jared has his own questions. Jared's on his own hunt for truth. Sure. If that's the case, my story is not that relevant. If, however, you're wrestling with doubt as to whether the Lord can transform you, whether the Lord can do anything with you, you're fearful of being just so grossly unworthy, then like my story could actually be useful. Sure. Because my story is a story of him taking a very broken vessel and healing up a lot of stuff, right? And that's actually a lot of people's story in Christ. So it's a time and a place thing. When people are openly asking questions, they that are unrelated to what I just described, I don't bother with my story. I keep them on task of building out their foundation on Christ and the teachings of the apostles. Right. I love that your thing breaks into the two aspects of people. Right. One's the emotion, where if I feel broken, there's no hope for me. That's when hearing someone else's story who's similar to you is really impactful. If you have a lot of practical or pragmatic or logic questions, that doesn't really help. It's then I'm going to teach you the tools to find the answer to that question. Right. And that's how you address it. So it's almost like you take these situations and you bifurcate it. Is this something someone needs emotional comfort through the example of how Jesus transformed, like Legion, right? Who's a great example of this guy was in chains and naked, and then now the opposite, where now he's clothed and in his right mind. Right. That's a very compelling story. Right. But if you have questions like the Pharisees or the Sadducees or someone who's well learned of the law, you're trying to abolish the law, Jesus. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to fulfill it, right? Now you're not going to say, so once upon a time I was 7 years old. You wouldn't do that. No. That's not going to happen. Here's the answer to those questions. So I think in this story you see that beautiful handling of the emotional side of it. Right? Absolutely.
See this guy's story who's completely different.
And sometimes people will cloak their emotional difficulties in a veil of intellectualism. And learning to pierce that veil and figure that out is part of the craft of evangelism. Oh yeah. Because being able to pierce that veil, and then because sometimes it's like, well, if only the Lord spoke to me and told me that this was so. I've had people say that basically, and like, well, how So you might have a part of your story where the Lord has actually come through and delivered you have received something from him.
Sure.
That was like, it's pretty hard to say that's not from the Lord.
Sure,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? You know, it's not like you get an email saying,
Yeah.
Dear Jared, this is from
Exactly.
God. But you might have very strong indicators. And if you have such a story, someone with that issue, that might be exactly what they need. And I've actually had such a thing happen. And the guy was like, that's more compelling to me than any piece of logic I've heard.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm like, but whereas his veneer was extremely rational because he wants to think of himself like that. But at the same time, he's also quite emotional. He's got emotional depth to him that he's and it's usually men who feel like this because men are not super comfortable having the emotional landscape, like the emotional underpinning problem.
Sure. Yeah.
Even though it's like, well, we're all human, like we all have this. And so I never poke somebody for having the feels or having the logical objections. It's just like, it's like, let's just deal with wherever you're at.
Exactly.
We'll just
Can we
meet you
deal
where
with
you
that?
are and try to go from there.
Just like Jesus dealt with Legion, where he was
Yeah.
at. Right. This was the issue. Yeah.
And he's merciful even to the demons, which I'm like, wow,
Yeah. Sure.
that's pretty nice considering they're like, you're here to torture us. And he's like, no. Yeah, they're like, can we go to this one? He's like, all right, go.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and the soul of one man is worth more than a herd of swine. Like I love that.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I love that. All right, let's continue on with that story because we've got to save some comments for it. I think it's this. Like we're gonna read it again. Just Mark's
Here on
account
Tuesday.
for Tuesday. Yeah, for Tuesday. So this is Mark 5, 1 through 20. Mark 5, 1 through 20.
All right, Mark 5, 1 through 20. Then they came to the other side of the sea, into the region of the Gerasenes. And when he got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one was able to bind him any more, even with a chain, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. And no one was strong enough to subdue him. And constantly, night and day, among the tombs and in the mountains, he was crying out and gashing himself with stones. And seeing Jesus from the distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he says, "What do I have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." For he had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he says to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he began pleading with him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there was a large herd of swine feeding nearby on the mountain. And the demons pleaded with him, saying, "Send us into the swine, so that we may enter them." And Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the unclean spirits entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. And the herdsmen ran away and reported it in the city and in the countryside, and the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they come to Jesus and observe the demon-possessed man sitting down, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion, and they became frightened. And those who had seen it recounted to them how this had happened to the demon-possessed man, and all about the swine. And they began to plead with him to leave their region. And as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed was pleading with him that he might accompany him. And he did not let him, but he says to him, "Go home to your people, and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he had mercy on you." And he went away, and began to preach in the Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was marveling.
Awesome. So that is that's Tuesdays, right?
Yep.
All right, Tuesday. So more on that Legion story. Now, something when you were reading it kind of pricked in my mind from yesterday's reading.
Yep.
From I think it was like Luke's account, where it sounds like when you're reading it, who's asking not to be sent away? Is it Legion, the guy himself, or is it the demons that are possessed?
Well, the demons talking through the guy.
Okay.
Because they're not yet cast out. So demons are really hung up on bodies because they need bodies in order to operate in the world. That seems to be the case. So yeah, so he's being puppeted by the demons, and that follows from all accounts that we have on the subject is the spirit of the man is not gone,
Right,
but
yeah.
it is being subjugated by the demons in this case, and so he's basically their marionette, which is why
Right.
he's gashing himself with stones because life is in the blood, and like there's a whole lot of like reasons for the kind of viciousness that is going on in his, physically.
Sure.
Demons are not like, they're not looking out for him. They're not buddies.
Right,
They want to create terror.
What was the wording it said in then what you just read? I know also, like, so people know, we are reading from two different versions. You're LSB, I'm New King James.
Yeah.
But I think it's a passage difference,
Okay.
not a version difference. In Luke 8, it says, I guess the demons beg, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, I beg you, do not torment me. And yours says, do not send me out from your presence. Is that?
I implore you by God, do not torment me. Yeah, no, that's what it says there on the front side. But he also says, do not send them. This is in verse 10. Begin pleading, do not send them out of the region. Whereas I think in Luke he says, don't send us into torment or in.
Exactly, yeah. So,
which is because they don't want to leave the physical realm because the other alternative is the realm of torment.
Got to my question, because that was my question, is wondering what it's interesting to see that difference. Like I said, that's why it's good to read the different versions or not versions, but different pastors' perspectives over the days.
Right. Well,
you can catch those things.
In Matthew, there are two men, and in Luke's and Mark's account, they only talk of the one man.
Two men?
Yeah, there's two men in Matthew, and people are like, "Oh, is this a contradiction?" No. Typically, in a scenario like this, you have a primary, and if there's and you'll have a secondary. So Matthew mentions the secondary. Luke and Mark just ignore the secondary, the secondary person. And so they're all healed. The two men are healed, but the secondary is not the guy who's like infamous.
Oh yeah. The first one, I don't know how I missed that. Yeah. Just for the audience sake, it says it in Matthew 8:28. When he had come to the other side of the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. Right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So you said, what was the explanation of why it's dropped from Mark and Luke?
Mark and Luke are talking about the guy who's primarily inhabited by Legion, and Matthew is just talking of there is a secondary man who's also demon possessed, who's also healed, but he's clearly not the primary. The primary is the guy who was like, at the end of the story, who wants to be with Jesus and probably was carrying the load.
I see what you're saying.
The largest load. And in these situations, you'll, excuse me, where evil is trucking like this, it is not strange that there is a primary and a secondary personality. Like there'll be a dominant and there'll be someone like almost like servant, for various reasons. And you'll see that across all manners of evil. It's not just demon possession.
No, yeah. So. No, I really like that, because then you get to see that. That's when knowing the purpose of why each of the Gospels written to their prospective audiences, because it seems like in Matthew is to just show the power of God, that hey, God is in control of all, and He healed both these two people.
Yeah.
And then you have at least in Luke's account, that it seems to emphasize the more personal
yeah.
side of like, hey, here's this guy who I wanted to be in Jesus' presence. And Jesus, for this time being, says, no, there's something else I need you to do. Go tell everyone what has been done for you.
Yeah.
Right. Does Mark say the same thing near the end?
Very similar. Okay. Very similar story. Like Mark and Luke are very parallel. I tend to use the Mark account in large part because you get a little bit more from the demons in terms of like what they say. They both end beautifully.
Right. Happy ending, yeah.
My throat is jacked up today.
That's okay. That's why video editing is amazing.
Yeah, that's why editing's awesome. But they're both really powerful. Like because the demons in Luke's account are like, don't send us to torment. They're afraid of because they know what their ultimate end is.
Right. Yeah.
They have a sense they're like, oh, it's going to be bad for us, and that's why they call out to Jesus, the Son of God. Are you here to torment us, or don't torment us? They're begging for more time. And
sure,
so there's that. That he does. And also I want to point out in verse 20, it says he goes and he,
book? Sorry, we don't talk about
I'm sorry, in Mark 5:20,
okay,
he
Mark
says
5:20.
he began to preach in the Decapolis, which I talked about in yesterday's reading. That's another reason I use the Mark account, because it's not just that he goes and he talks to the people at his home. He goes and he preaches. And you think this guy was extremely educated? Like, was he a rabbi who was possessed? Probably not. My point being, you can do this.
Right.
Like this, what Jesus has done for you is a story you always have, and only you have that version of that story, and every one of them is unique. And so it's okay. Like it's fine to feel nervous about talking to people about Jesus and it's very understandable if you think you have to talk from a high theology perspective, but actually you don't need to begin there. One, you need to know your own story and when to employ it, and two, you need to be able to ask questions,
Right.
and listen meaningfully to the answers. It's when someone, because you ask them about what do they think of Jesus,
Right. Yeah.
before you throw your story at them, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A great opener is actually, is there anything I can pray for you?
Sure.
Can I pray for you about anything? I kind of like the way it's, figuring out how to ask that question.
Sure. Sure.
And people are like, sometimes that'll weird them out. It's okay. Like, look, we're pushing
peculiar people.
Yeah, we're peculiar
anyway.
people anyway. We're pushing social boundaries by talking about religion as it is.
Sure.
The devil's like, no politics and religion. It's like, okay, well, the first one is dicey at times, but the second one is like, no, you got to be bold. But bold doesn't mean a bulldozer. It just means, so it's asking, is there anything I could be praying about for you? And they'll tell you a lot of times if there is. Now, some people will just say, no, get away from me. I don't want to.
Sure. Yeah.
That's fine. They're letting you know, but they'll often tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then pray for them right then and there. Like, can I pray for you right now?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, okay. And you do it. And then because they've shared with you, you might share a little bit of your story, which makes sense, like in conjunction to theirs. It's a great way to get conversations rolling. And you can do this with strangers.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying you, my brothers and sisters listening, have to do that. I'm saying that you can do this in such a way that there's people that you could do this with.
Right.
And all you're doing is just sharing what the Lord has done in your life. That said, he went around the Decapolis. We don't know exactly what he was doing, but we know he was declaring what Jesus had done for him. He's probably pretty fearless.
Sure.
Because he's been through the ringer. And you'll find people who have been through really tough spiritual things, like really hard spiritual things, tend to be more bold because they're used to being at the point of friction anyway.
Exactly.
It's like, look at the Apostle Paul. He kind of went through it. He was struck blind for 3 days. It's a big deal for the things that happened to him.
No, actually, yeah. No, to transition to the next day, what I like about this is reading about Legion is you're getting to see a lot, at least in the Luke's account, you get a little bit more, and I think Mark's a little bit too, that one-on-one connection with Jesus, right? Explaining how he wants to be with him, and then Jesus says, no, do this other thing. In tomorrow's reading, we're going to see more of that. We get to see more of these one-on-one stories with people who, similar to Legion, they all had big struggles, and you'll see that, what you're going to see is that it's going to increase.
Yeah.
Where it starts off, hey, this is a demon-possessed person. We can't really relate to that because we don't really see that nowadays, but we can understand having a new look on life.
Thank God
right?
for that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That's a blessing.
Exactly. We may experience it where it's like maybe you had, a huge financial loss, and you're living off the street. Maybe you grew up in a very, impoverished family, or maybe, you had a parent that wasn't there, and then Jesus gave you a whole new life in that way.
Right.
That's how we can kind of,
we can
somewhat
relate.
meander back to a Legion-like situation because you have a new lot in life. These other stories we're going to talk about, with Jairus' daughter and the bleeding woman, those are going to be more directly situations we can relate to because it's more similar to what people can tend to struggle with. So that's what we're going to start off. Without further ado, on Wednesday's reading, let's go ahead and read starting in Matthew chapter 9, and we're going to read verses 18 through 26. I think I can read that. It's only 8. It's only 8 verses. I can remember that. Matthew 9, verses 18 through 26 reads, While he spoke these things to them, behold, a ruler came and worshipped him, saying, My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live. So Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And suddenly a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment. For she said to herself, If only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well. But Jesus turned around, and when he saw her, he said, Be of good cheer, daughter, your faith has made you well. And the woman was made well from that hour. Now when Jesus had came into the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the noisy crowd wailing, he said to them, Make room, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose, and the report of this went out into all the land. All right, so that's Matthew's account, and Thursday and Friday is going to go into more detail, so I'm going to try not to go into the detailed points. I just kind of paint the scenario here.
Yeah.
I would probably be, my mom who watches this podcast, love you, Mom. She's probably going to get frustrated if I don't point out that this, paint the story here that this idea of this woman with the flow of blood coming to Jesus for healing was something that we can read about in Old Testament teaching, where they talk about the Messiah and healing in his wings.
Yeah.
And that the wings were representative of the hems of the garments that the Jewish people would wear at that time, possibly
Nice.
the priests. I don't know the story as well as my mom does, but it was this idea that the main takeaway is that this type of healing was that if people who knew that Jesus was who he said he was, they would expect this to work. And that's what you're seeing manifest in this woman. She's tried everything to get over this. And she's like, well, if I can just touch the hem of his garments, just like the Old Testament teachings have talked about who the Messiah, if he really is the Messiah, this would happen.
Yeah, this will work.
Exactly. And so that's why you see her do that. So this isn't just a random, like, oops, I tripped, I just need you, and then randomly touched it. This you can come across as something a little bit more intentional, because Jesus' comment was, hey, your faith has made you well.
Well, I love that. I love that. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful moment. And we think about the depth of her desperation of 12 years of being an outsider in society.
No, exactly.
That's a long time, and the doctor's not crushing it, and that'll get into tomorrow's reading.
Exactly.
But I love the faith of this woman, and I love what you just said there about the healing in his wings, because here we are in our blue jeans and our and our button downs, and like we have no such things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you've ever worn a cloak or you've worn robe like objects,
Sure.
like there is this sort of thing that happens when you move like that. But I would not have put that together, except you said that. And I'm like, so today I learned, I was this many days old, when this idea came to me. And I'm like, oh, that's really good. So
yeah. No, that's
it
beautiful
is.
stuff.
It is. It's
And
a beautiful moment.
Yeah, then I love the other side, right? Because you have two contrasting situations, all right? I'm not going to go into the details of these people just yet. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Tune in
But
for
then we
tomorrow.
get to this ruler. So keep in mind, that's how we're going to refer to it. Yes, if you see the title, his name is Jairus or Jairus. I always get the name pronounced wrong. What is it? I say Jairus. That's what it looks like. But anyway,
say it confidently.
there you go.
It won't
Exactly.
matter.
But over here, Matthew emphasizes this idea of this ruler. What was it? Ruler
Of the synagogue.
of the synagogue. Okay, so this was, so this is a beautiful aspect. We get to see it's two different people who seem to be of understanding the Old Testament. If you have a ruler in the synagogue, then somebody who understands this concept about Jesus.
Right.
Both these people are coming to Jesus with vastly different problems in their life.
Oh yeah, and different places. She's an
Exactly.
outcast and he's an insider.
Exactly.
Right? And very different mindset.
I love how me and you just had that the think alike moment there, because that's where I was going to go with it. It's like just like the Jews and the Gentiles,
Yep.
the outsiders and then the insiders coming together. This is even though she was probably of the same religious people.
Oh yeah, she's a Jew, but
Exactly, but it's that same concept. If you have someone from the outside who was unclean, right? And then you have this guy from the synagogue who, hey, he's from the synagogue, you're probably taught. Both these people are coming together. And so that's what you can see is the point that's being made here, is both people who are considered clean and unclean, and you can replace that with Jew and Gentile. They're both coming to Jesus, and they both can receive healing for the thing that they, or, and this person, the ruler's daughter, wants, to bring her back to life.
Right.
Or healing.
And the unique thing here in the Matthew reading is, she touches his garment, and Jesus turns in this account, daughter, take courage, your faith has saved you.
Right. Yeah.
And it at once the hemorrhage is gone. So in this recounting, it's the focus is on her faith.
Exactly.
Being she believes that he is able. Like she believes in his ability to do this thing. And doesn't require much from him in the process. Like she's not putting him to the test.
Right.
There's no test. Like for her, it's a done deal as long as she touches him. And I would say that is true of all of us.
Sure.
Our uncleanness can be healed as long as we believe that if we touch him, we are healed. Basically, and how will you touch the hem of his garment? How will you touch him? Well, it's like when you are clothed in baptism, you're not just touching the hem of his garment. You're wrapped in it, and that's where the healing is. And it's only in
100%.
only in faith can that be had.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think I love that, there's how we can relate this to us is we might try to find, salvation in other things. Like, oh, if I just learn this, if I perfect myself, if I do all these other things.
I hit the gym, 6 days a week and blah, blah. Like,
if I do all these, intense routine things, then maybe I'll be able to get salvation. Right. But she's the kind of physical example of that. This person is not feeling well. done everything she could. She can't.
Yeah.
And she knows, hey, it's just Jesus will heal me. And that's the mindset we'd have. Hey, it's Jesus that will heal me and make me whole.
Yep.
And that's what we go to.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to...
What's our next reading?
it's going to be just reading different aspects of the story. So what you're going to see here is we try to do our best just riffing off what Matthew has said. And I think probably both me and Patrick, due to our knowledge of Scripture, we probably unintentionally bled into the other readings.
It's okay.
Because
it's all dovetailed.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is the next one for, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, Thursday and Friday are just going to continue on, and we'll try to do the same thing and say, hey, it's going to be the same story, but you'll start seeing that Luke and Mark give you different tidbits and pieces. And so we're going to talk about how those things add even more color and more
depth.
More depth to the story. So if you can read, Patrick, Mark chapter 5, your favorite gospel, just because you like the executive summary gospel.
Yeah, it lets me work
all
the
gospels are good. It's just, that one's good for
my
summary.
primary mission.
Exactly, yeah. And so Mark chapter 5, verses 21 through 43.
Mark 5, 21 through what?
43.
And when Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him. And so he stayed by the seashore. And one of the synagogue officials named Jairus comes up, and upon seeing him, falls at his feet, and pleads with him earnestly, saying, My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come, that by coming you may lay your hands on her, so that she will be saved and live. And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. And a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years, and had endured much at the hands of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse. After hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him and touched his garment. For she was saying, If I just touch his garment, I will be saved from this. And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she knew within her body that she had been healed of her affliction. And immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around in the crowd and was saying, Who touched my garments? And his disciples were saying to him, You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, Who touched me? And he was looking around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. While he was still speaking, they come to the house of the synagogue official, saying, Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more? But Jesus, overhearing what had been spoken, says to the synagogue official, Do not be afraid, only believe. And he allowed no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they come to the house of the synagogue official, and he sees a commotion, and people loudly crying and wailing. And entering in, he says to them, Why are you making a commotion and crying? The child has not died, but is asleep. And they began laughing at him, but putting them all out, he takes along the child's father and mother and his own companions, and enters the room where the child was. And taking the child by the hand, he says to her, Talitha cum, which translated means, Little girl, I say to you, arise. And immediately the little girl stood up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old, and immediately they were completely astonished. And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. And he said that some food should be given to her to eat.
Awesome. Appreciate you reading that. So what you'll see here is right now we're getting more context, right?
Yeah.
You have the guy's named, right, Jairus. You have more interaction between Jesus and the one with the flow of blood that's given here. And what I love about this is, why do you think she was trembling when she was responding to Jesus saying, I'm the one that touched you?
She's not supposed to touch him.
Mm-hmm.
She's unclean. She's not supposed to do that. She's not even supposed to be in the crowd.
Sure, yeah.
So she knows she's skirting the law here. Mm-hmm. Out of desperation, she's doing the thing she should not do, mm-hmm. And is aware that she should not do it. Mm-hmm. And Jesus' answer is very merciful.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah. I love that point, because that's why this person was at. Right, that was pretty much where she was at. She was like, well, it's either I get healed or I die. Right. Those are the only two options.
Because I'm ready to die.
Exactly. Because there's nothing else that I can do. And then when she goes to Jesus, she's healed, and then Jesus brings life. So even sin, when you bring it to Jesus, it gets cleansed. And so that's the cool thing you get with that interaction that you see here that you don't get to see from the Matthew, because Matthew does a great job of like, Jesus is who he says he was because this woman was healed and then this person's daughter was raised, which is good information to have. But you see Mark gives this other context, so you can really feel that emotion in the story of like, this woman knows that she's worthy of death, which, in Romans, 3:23, I think that's all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. I think I got those correct. I might have mixed those two.
It's okay.
But we all are in a sense the woman in a sense, because we don't have any chance at life. But this woman saw, hey, if I, want to have a chance at life, I have to go to Jesus for that. And Jesus can cleanse that sin. And that's why we have Jesus as our, sacrificial lamb who died on the cross. Because when we're baptized, then our sins are cleansed, similar to the woman's.
Yeah. in her case, like she has the uncleanness of her disease, and then she has the transgression of even being in the crowd, which goes to that Jesus is going to wash, like he's going to wipe that away too. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
There'll be no stoning today for her violations of law. Yeah. Like he's like, no, I'm here for it. I'm here mercifully. He's there for that purpose to pick up the weak and the broken and the lame, the maimed, the blind. He's the ones who are the outcasts and the offscourings of society. He goes to them first. And it makes sense to do that a lot of the time because people who are broken and know it are pretty happy to receive healing. It doesn't mean that they're going to become wealthy if they're poor. It just means that their poverty will not be their affliction. Like there's lots of poor that have been Christians. That's pretty standard, actually.
Absolutely. What I also think is cool is in this story that we get to see is that there's more context here with Jairus, right? And he says, "Hey, come, urgently. My daughter's not well." And so you have this sense of urgency with Jairus. We got to get there. And then and then the whole thing gets stopped by this woman. So it's like it's cool to see now you can compare the situations where you have Jairus is like, I just need Jesus to get to my daughter so that she won't die.
Right.
And then you have this woman who now she's healed. Yeah. And then but that takes precious time from his perspective. So much so that he gets report to say, hey, don't trouble the master anymore because she's already dead. Yeah. She's gone. And so it's interesting to see that. And then finally Jesus says, if you believe, and then so they go, and then he raises her from the dead. What I think is interesting is you have that contrasting of urgency. Yeah. Right? He's so urgent. You got to get to it now before my daughter dies. Right. And then you have the urgency of the woman who, because of her urgency, knowing I need Jesus, went straight to, and she was healed. And then you have Jairus here that, for some reason, we don't know why from the text, but he has to wait. Yeah. Right. And so, but what we see here is that even when he waits, Jesus can still do the unthinkable. So one's, hey, urgency, understand you need Jesus. And the other is, hey, wait for Jesus' time. And there's nothing that Jesus can't do. Right. And so you get that cool kind of the flipping of urgency there.
Right. And we could also contrast Jairus to the centurion. Very similar problems. Yeah. But the centurion doesn't feel like he has to wait. He's like, I just know you can just do this. Like you can just say, that's over, done and dusted, no problem. And Jairus is like, I need you in my house. Right. Yeah. Which is its own thing. Yeah. Now the centurion does not feel worthy of having Jesus in his house. Jairus doesn't have that hang up, but he's an insider. Remember, he's a leader of the synagogue. Exactly. So he already has in his mind a relationship with with the Messiah. The centurion knows he has no relationship with the Messiah and really no right to ask. Yeah. And so he comes in with a great deal of humility, whereas Jairus has a great deal of familiarity. And I'm not saying that Jairus is proud. I don't want it to be taken that way. I think he just has he has an intimacy with who the Messiah is, being well versed in the scriptures, and he trusts Jesus. He does in fact believe that Jesus is this. Otherwise, he wouldn't ask. Exactly. So like it's an interesting dynamic. We were talking about evangelism before we started recording. Sorry, Eric, you missed a great conversation. Yeah. But one of the things that does come up is sometimes people don't feel worthy of Jesus, and they're not. None of us are. but that'll be the inhibitor to coming to him. That'll be the thing that stops him. Sure. This woman with the flow of blood, she's the inversion of that.
Exactly.
She knows she's not worthy, but she's like, I got nothing. There is no hope.
Yeah. What else is there?
You know, and so notice Jesus can take you, whether you're the centurion who feels unworthy and he can still heal, or you're Jairus who is, maybe you're raised in the church and you feel this intimacy of relationship and he can still heal. And then, or maybe you've been cast out because of, your uncleanness, like this woman, and yet he can still heal. That's the big message there.
Exactly.
He takes all who will come to him in faith.
Exactly. And then tying this back to Legion, who we read this week, right? That's why it's, you have both, you have all of those connecting materials there with, you have Legion, who he was also, an outcast. He was chained up. He was locked up. He couldn't do anything.
And he has no faith.
Yeah.
He's at the mercies of the demons.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jesus is able to heal that. Yeah. Then you have someone who just has a disease or an ailment who can't be in the large society. Jesus heals that. And then you have someone who comes to it, who's in more of the, kind of like we said, the in crowd, because he's the leader of the synagogue, come to Jesus, and Jesus can still even, heal.
Turns out the solution is Jesus.
Yeah.
All the time.
So you could just say, Jesus is the answer, but it's not as,
well,
meaningful or the depth but hey.
Every application has a unique kind of channel to it.
Yeah.
Like if you meet someone who is so overtaken in their sin that they are kind of like the guy with Legion in him. Like that's a fairly far gone state. And yet even these you throw seed at.
Exactly.
To see, is this actually the lifeline this person's been dying for?
Sure, yeah.
And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll try to turn and rend you, and you just pay attention to which it is, and there you go. So, but every time, yes, of course, it's Jesus, but it's going to come through. That's why we have these stories.
In the avenue. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
To teach us when we meet people on the road, we can take them to these variations and say, it looks like this. You might relate to the woman with this flow, and
sure,
and it might be a dude you're talking to, but the sickness is what it is, and his porn addiction for the last 15 years has got a hold of him, and he's tried everything, and nothing's working, and he just desperately wants to be free of this thing. And there's a lot of guys out there that are in that situation, and it's like, well, that's an uncleanness that's got its hooks in you so hard. The answer is the healing in the wings of Christ, and I grabbed that one because that one's endemic, sadly.
Exactly.
Where hers is a unique situation, but still, regardless, the path is the same. It is
same effect, still separating. No, absolutely. Alrighty, let's. So I hope you're seeing this kind of buildup of detail, right?
Yeah.
We have Matthew, who just kind of summarizes it. We have Mark, who gives you the name of the person, who also gives you the conversation between Jesus and the woman. And Luke's going to give us even just a little bit more detail, but it's very profound here. So I think it's my reading, right? Luke 8.
Sure.
Sounds good. Yeah, you read Mark, because I remember making the comment about how you love Mark.
Oh, yes.
All right, so Friday's reading is going to be talking about the same story, but it's going to give us some more context. It is Luke 8, and it's going to be 40 through 56. So a little bit of a long reading, but it will be a good one. Luke 8, 40 through 56. So it was when Jesus returned that the multitude welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue, and he fell down at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. But as he went, the multitude thronged him. Now a woman having a flow of blood for 12 years, who had spent all of her livelihood on physicians, could not be healed by any, came from behind and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter and those with him said, "Master, the multitudes throng and press you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus said, "Somebody touched me, for I perceive the power out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared to him in the presence of all the people for the reason she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said to her, "Daughter, be of good cheer, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying, "Your daughter is dead, do not trouble the teacher." But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, "Do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well." When he came into the house, he permitted no one to go in except Peter, James, and John, and the father and mother of the girl. Now all wept and mourned for her, but he said, "Do not weep, she is not dead, but she is sleeping." And they ridiculed him, knowing that she was dead. And he put them all outside, took her by the hand, and called, saying, Little girl, arise. Then her spirit returned, and she arose immediately. And he commanded that she be given something to eat. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. All right, so that's the some of the story. We got a lot of detail here.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of list it out. I think first one is was Peter identified in Mark and Matthew?
I don't think so.
I don't remember that Peter's name is dropped. I think it just said we can do that really quick. Can you go back to the Mark passage? I know Matthew didn't at all because Matthew was just like
Right.
But I think in Mark 5.
Mark 5 here.
I just want to make sure we're speaking accurately to the word. Because I thought it just said, and the people asked him and said, why do you, why did you ask this question?
Yeah, it was just says, and his disciples were saying to him, you see the crowd pressing in on you.
Interesting. Cool. So both Matthew and Mark, you don't get the detail, but in Luke just name drops Peter. It just says, Peter's the one who said, hey, you say, who touched you? Well, the whole crowd's here.
Yeah.
Right.
And the general understanding is that Peter was actually informing Mark's writing, and which is why Peter is basically never name dropped in Mark.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
But if you read it, if you read Mark, you kind of get this. You can kind of feel Peter's hand in it because it is moving so fast.
Right.
Like it's very, very. I always get the sense that Peter's a bullet point communicator.
Sure. Or maybe it was near the end of his life, and so he had a
but even like you just look at the way he talks. Like he says the thing everybody else is thinking.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. He says it very directly. How I
take it is that the other gospels, everyone was thinking that, but Peter's just how like somebody says a question and everyone had that question, but no one just spoke up. Yeah. That's kind of how it sounds like. Peter's the one who said it, but everyone else had it.
This guy.
Yeah,
like I love Peter because I feel that that impulse to say the same. He's like everybody's crushing in on you. What are you talking about right now?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but yeah, you have that sort of name drop here. John does the same thing to him in his gospel. He's always name dropping Peter.
Exactly.
It's like, oh yeah, I beat him in a foot race. Haha, he's slow.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
but
the other important detail that we see here is, other than Peter being the name drop, is we also get more context of the woman with the flow of blood. Right in 47, it says, "Now when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling." Right. So it's this idea that when she saw that she was not hidden, so this idea of she knew what she was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
Because she was unclean, and because she was not hidden, okay, and that's where
she's like, I'm not going to get away with this.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, I'm not trying to make it sound like she was more nefarious. I think it's just the takeaway I think of it is she just understands the nature of what she's doing. It's just wrong due to Jewish custom. That's all.
Right, and she knows she's just and Jesus says something unique, which is, someone did touch me, for I knew that power had gone out of me.
Yeah,
and that right there is like the compass needle just turned on her.
Right, exactly.
He is basically saying to her, I know it's you.
Yeah.
Which is actually an act of mercy on his part.
Sure.
He didn't say, you're the one. He said, someone touched me. I know because I felt the power go out of me. He's making it abundantly clear to the one who did the thing, I know that you did the thing, which gives her the opportunity to come forward and confess it. And she does. And she's afraid because she doesn't really know how this is going to roll out for her. She just knows that he had the power to heal him, and it did, and she is healed. And she understands who she's interacting with. Like, he's powerful. She knows that.
Yeah.
And that understandably makes her feel afraid, because when you come to the presence of God, that happens anyway. But she has hard proof, and then he is just so gracious to her.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the confession because. Right, that's part of one of the things that we do, in order to be saved, is because you have to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, and then there's other things you have to do as well. But you see, this is a little bit of that. Like, hey, you have to. Yeah, this is what I did.
The Lord does this a lot throughout. God does this a lot throughout His book. Right. Think about Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
In the garden, they've done a thing. They know they've done the wrong thing, and God's like, "Hey guys, where you at?" They're trying to play hide and seek with God, which. That's silly.
Sure.
But they do. And they're like, well, we hid from you because we're naked. And he's like, who told you you're naked? Did you do this thing? And so he the whole time he's giving them opportunity to confess. They don't confess. He ends up just convicting them straight up. But their confessions are like half-hearted. Hers, not so much. She's like all in.
Exactly.
And this happens a lot in Scripture where God is very patient, and he's trying to give humans the opportunity to be honest, because that honesty will be rewarded by him. But it's when we play half measures with him, he's like, no, that's not going to work.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And we do this nowadays. Like sometimes we make confession and other things to supernatural. And I'm not saying it can't, that there aren't things that are supernatural in what God does. There is.
Yeah, of course.
But my point is this is not necessarily so unrelatable. We see this in our own lives with, raising kids. My brother's in town with my nephews, and obviously my nephew said, did something. And then when asked if he did it, he said, no, I didn't do that. And so my brother just walked over and just said, hey, did you not? And just listed out the action to give him a chance to confess to the thing that he did. Because lying, we have no tolerance in my family for lying. And so my brother's very much instilling that in his two sons. Right. But that's how it's trained. It's we go to you and we
honestly,
say,
I would hate for your brother to do that to me. That would be terrible. It's like, well, that's going to be a case that's really tight.
Exactly. My brother's a lawyer, so it's like very legalese.
Like it's going to be really, really well formed.
At least he doesn't have his kids say all rise, and then he comes in. But
you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Exactly. Yeah. So bring that up. You say that's the simple act of confession that we do with our kids.
Right.
That's what Jesus is doing. So when he does it back in the Garden of Eden, right? That's what he's doing. And Jesus here with this woman with the flow of blood, it's the same thing. It's not something that's so unrelated to us,
right?
Because we do it
as a young father. I would do part of this. I would give them opportunity to confess, but my motives weren't the same because I was immature in faith. But as I've come further along in fatherhood and definitely deeper in my relationship with the Heavenly Father, I see the application of, I'm doing this as an act of mercy. This is not me looking to like, gotcha, or any other such thing, or my ego and my emotions are not really tied up in it. It's actually about mercy, extending mercy to them. Mercy is withholding the punishment they actually deserve, that they deserve. You're belaying that punishment and saying you have an opportunity to be true here. And yes, there may be consequences of it, but we're going to be in a different conversation.
Exactly. Correct.
With that. And
that's why I love the story of King David and Nathan, because it's that, right? There was a realization when David saw with the story how that person deserves death. And when Nathan says, well, you're that man. Yeah. Then he says, forgive me, right? Because it clicks. Right. Yeah. And so when you have someone who gets it, when they were just, yes, this.
And David was slow. Like this is not like he should have been coming way faster, but he was slow, and that's why he got the harder thing as a result. Yeah.
And then you see the one with the flow of blood. It's the more positive.
Right. It's the reverse. Exactly. Because she understands. She comes full in and is like, it was me. I did that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because and she explains like what her situation is. She's been like we learned these details in the previous reading about the 12 years with all the physicians. All of her money's been spent.
Exactly.
She's destitute and worse off. Exactly. She's in worse condition than when she started. Yep. And so she's like, this is an act of desperation. And she's still afraid telling this. Like, she's confessing this, trembling in fear, right? And Jesus is like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace.
Exactly. That's why the story is so good. I think the one of the last differences we get, there might be more, but the one that I see immediately out is verse 50 in Luke 8, where it says, when Jesus heard it, he answered, do not be afraid, only believe and she'll be made well. And this is when he came into the house, he permitted no one to go except Peter, James, and John, and then the father and mother of the girl. So, so he brings, these three disciples, later apostles to this event to see this, which is pretty cool. And the reason why that's fascinating is because in the end, what does Jesus say? He says, tell no one.
Don't tell anybody.
Right. So these, or at least these three apostles got this privilege to see this event happen live. Yeah. And then afterwards you said, hey, just keep this under wraps for a little bit.
Right.
And so it's really interesting.
And in the previous reading in Mark, he says, little girl, arise. Right. He calls her out. And then here I have a footnote in mine. Mine says, do not be afraid any longer, only believe and she will be saved. That's in Luke Luke 8:50, and yours says that she'll be made well. I have a footnote that says, or made well.
Sure.
But I think the translators here just chose to be saved because it kind of runs in the theme of Jesus
From
saving
death,
people.
yeah.
But yeah, this. I also think it's funny that in the Matthew account we don't get this note about don't tell people. Instead, it's just like, and it went everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, but they all thought she's dead. How are they going to
Right.
keep it under wraps for very long?
Sure.
But it's going to be localized to them.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, everybody on the street knew she was dead.
Right.
They're like, you're crazy thinking she's asleep. We know she's dead. We know what dead looks like.
Exactly.
And so they're mourning, and he's like, nah, it's like you're premature here. I'm just, I'm not late. You're just impatient.
Sure,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
and
100%.
and then so of course it spread everywhere because she's a little girl going to be running around, and they're like, nah, she was dead. She's not now, and it's Jesus. I think the apostles probably listened.
Sure.
But good luck keeping the little girl from telling everybody what happened.
No, absolutely.
She's 12. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
If you met a 12-year-old little girl, they talk a lot.
Sure.
Generally speaking, not all, but
Sure,
a lot of them are pretty talkative.
Yeah.
Especially if they died and are now risen. Yeah, there's this one time.
Yeah, there you go.
They're just over here dropping lore.
Exactly. And the other thing I think a pin that you're going to want to put in as a listener is these three apostles, Peter, James, and John. They're going to be, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's essentially Jesus' inner circle.
Yeah, they're the guys who go up on the Mount of
I was going to say,
Transfiguration.
because later on, we didn't get to this, but Matthew 17, the Transfiguration, it's those same three that one, they get to see Jesus raise this daughter from the dead, and then they also get to see Jesus transfigured later.
And they're called up on the Mount of Olives to pray on the final night.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. So you get to see them, that's
they're,
those three.
They're regularly chucking in this. They are the inner circle. And what does that mean for them? Well, they saw a lot.
Right, yeah.
And the irony is James is the first apostle to die. Peter is the first preacher to both the Jews and the Gentiles. And John is the last apostle to die.
Right, yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's high intensity stuff. Like it's an honor that they're in, but it's a high responsibility.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, then, you can ask, like, why did Jesus do this? I mean, even in leadership principles in business or in other avenues, they call that the law of the inner circle, that there's an inner circle of people you keep close to that you can then invest a lot of your time in, because as a leader, you're finite.
Yeah.
And so you invest in as much as you can of them, and they can be the closest representatives to do things, not the exact, but close to facsimile of what you do.
Right.
Right. And so that's what you get to see. I think you get to see here with those apostles, like you just said, right? One dies, is one of the first apostles martyred.
Yep.
Right. You have Peter who gets crucified upside down, right, and gets to do the first sermon. And then you have John who gets to be the last apostle. Yeah. And gets to see then also Jesus on the throne in Revelation.
Yeah, Peter opens the gates of the kingdom of heaven, both to the Jews and the Gentiles.
Exactly.
Correct. By preaching in Acts 2 and Acts 10.
In Acts 10, exactly. So you get to see that's the investment that Jesus has put into those apostles. And you can see how that manifests later on.
Yeah.
So
awesome sauce.
Yeah. So I love this week's reading. This one was fun because I think it's nice to have these stories that easily start with like Matthew giving you like, here's what happened. And then Mark, like, here's some detail. And then Luke, here's even more detail being a physician.
Yeah.
And then you can easily see how there's so many applications to us today where one, hey, we have to realize we have to come to Jesus and we need Jesus, that no matter what we try, you can be like the woman with the flow of blood, try every human thing to figure it out. You'll be just like her left. I have nothing left. I need to go to Jesus. And then you have, her and the synagogue person both being different perspective. One's an outcast due to being unclean, and one's in the in the synagogue. Both, Jesus unites both people, and is able to save them. And so that's the lesson for us today, that we have to realize what state we're in, go to Jesus, because he's the only one that can help us, regardless of whether you've been raised in the church or whether you've been outside of the church or you've fallen away, whatever regardless of wherever your proximity is. But that these two people represent, you can come to Jesus and receive the same healing.
Final thought on the healings too is, she was healed of a physical malady, made clean, so she was now brought back into the society. Sometimes we in this age have physical maladies, but they will not necessarily be healed. Think of the thorn of the flesh of Paul. Exactly. We don't know what it was. I always say, I know what it is. Whatever it is that you need for it to work for your life, to make sense of your situation, you know,
Okay.
because Paul doesn't say, and that's probably on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's on purpose, but the point is sometimes you will be physically afflicted, but it's not about your physical tent. It's about this woman is made clean and integrated into the relationship that she should be in as a Jew. She should be in the covenant relationship, not an outcast. And so he pulls her back in. You know, your faith has saved you. And then come, you know, Acts chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost. You know, she's probably one of the first in line. You know, she's probably all about it.
100%. Yeah.
And you think about all these people that Jesus heals.
Yeah.
That's probably the case.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, we love Jesus. You know, we're in.
Yeah.
You know, and because it's hard to resist such a testimony. And imagine you're worshiping with people who were physically healed by Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
Like their testimony is going to be unstoppable in the church.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's also going to be really hard to be a big doubter when you stand next to the guy who was formerly possessed by Legion.
Yeah. No, exactly.
When you're singing songs of praise to God next to him. Yeah. You know, and that's another reason it's useful to actually know each other's story.
Right.
You know, because otherwise I abstract Jared to being, Jared was raised in the church, put that in air quotes. So he's just squared away because insert beautiful reasons.
Perfect.
Yeah, everything's just been fine.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it hasn't been a cakewalk.
Sure.
And knowing that actually stabilizes my own faith.
Sure.
Because watching my brothers and sisters overcome in Christ through him and by him is stabilizing for my own faith. Because if I'm struggling, there we are. I can look to my brother or sister who I know and go, you know, I know they've walked the dark shadow as well. You know, they've been in the valley before.
Exactly.
And the Lord guided them to back out. And so then that means it's safe for me to, one, talk to them, and two, there's hope. They're you know, each of our lives can be a testimony of the hope in Christ.
Cool.
So,
awesome. Thank you so much. That was week 15 is what I said?
I think so.
Yeah, week 15 of the Tidewater Stream podcast. Thank you so much for joining in. I guess we got one more week. Not this week, but next week is our gospel meeting.
Yes, the gospel meeting is not this weekend.
I'm going to put up the flyer again because if you guys are interested.
If you're in the area.
Yeah, we'd love you. And it's Ryan
Boyer.
Yeah, I was about to say that. And
looking forward to those lessons that look like they're going to be pretty good.
Exactly. So, a lot of, learning more about scripture, learning what we can do.
Ryan's a preacher from the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
And also runs the Missouri FC camp.
Awesome.
Florida College camp. And so he's
appreciate that.
Hard worker in the kingdom, and look forward to making his acquaintance.
Exactly. So yeah, if people from St. Louis want to see your preacher, hey, come by to where we're at in Hampton Roads area in Virginia.
Just drive over. It's only
exactly. It's only like
13
20 hours or something.
So,
yeah.
No, it is like probably approaching that.
So. But anyways, even people in the local area, if you're interested, it's on our website. Check us out, TidewaterChurchOfChrist.com. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
God bless.